Why Are There No Bullet Trains in the United States by Ava Cofield and Angie Rogan.
Okay, first to preface, what are high speed trains? These are trains that are popular all across Europe and Asia. So far, they have moved 9 billion passengers in a year with zero casualties. They travel up to 200 miles per hour on average, and with these trains, it can take you 2 hours to get from Paris to London. So, unlike other countries, we're really lagging behind on this high speed rail system despite many efforts from organizations in the US. We were the leading rail system before World War II, and ever since then, we've been declining in status ever since. And today, the US more so focuses on the automobile industry, um, even though Amtrak is still a really big company here in the US. The government is its main shareholder, and it's really not a foundation of the US economy or the US lifestyle. So our trains travel up to 60 miles per hour, and infrastructure is not really an issue that's being talked about right now due to our current political status.
Let's move on to California. One example of United States trying to set up a high-speed bullet train system, actually the only example, is the California project. It was supposed to link San Francisco and Los Angeles, but it actually ended up being highly mismanaged and controversial. The main problem with the issue is that it was very much underfunded. Um, the government originally thought that they were gonna be easily able to finish off the project in no time with the with limited amount of budget, but actually turned out to be a very hard project that turned out costing way more than it was supposed to. Now let's talk about some historical factors that have contributed to the United States not having a modern, efficient, high-speed train system. So, firstly, after the 1920s, the car industry exploded in the United States. It changed the consumer taste, which drove the demand for trains down. Later on, starting from 1910, the inflation has really injured the mostly private railroad industry. The rising costs of materials have diminished the investment in the industry, causing it to cripple. Additionally, rise of a jitney, which is basically a taxi, also threatened the industry as it was providing stronger competition. Moving on to the public transportation, it developed a negative image as the time period was marked by political and financial corruptions. Additionally, the bus that was actually sponsored by huge automobile companies also kind of basically wiped out public transportation in the inner cities.
So, current factors or reasons that trains are not really developed and worked on today. There's a lot of them. I'd say the first one is airline competition, actually. Um, so, if people are starting to demand high speed rails to get places quickly, the demand for domestic plane travel is going to drastically decrease, as we know from the law of supply and demand. Um, and so the people's or airlines' anger about this issue is really clearly shown in multiple cases. First off, in 1989, Southwest Airlines lobbied against TGV, which is a French rail provider who wanted to start a railroad project in Texas, based in Houston. But Southwest claimed that they were wasting the money on a project that was totally based around nostalgia and not based around simple practicality. And then in 2015, a similar debate almost ensued with Southwest after the California Rail Project's failure. They were still convinced that this was all related to nostalgia and that the money was poorly spent. And then in real life, the increase in airline competition and less domestic travel is actually shown in Belgium, where domestic flights are practically non existent at this point because high speed rails are so big and can get you places so fast in Europe that it's completely unnecessary for someone to have these hour long flights, like 30 minutes, etc. Or the main one is that building these high speed rails is extremely expensive. The Midwest Rail Initiative, which is a current idea that 9 states have created in the Midwest, um, they want to create a 3,000-mile long railroad track, pretty much to link the Midwest and try to get all of these smaller cities and less urban areas connected. But a high-speed rail in the Midwest would cost 82 million per mile, whereas moderate speed rails would only cost 2.4 million per mile. Alone, this would cost the whole project would cost 7.7 billion dollars, which is double the current transportation budget, as you can see from the graph on the right. And of course, in addition to the cost of building a railroad, you have other production costs to worry about, including input costs, and the cost of the land and eminent domain issues that would result, due to the new railroads across all of the land, etc. Um, and then, of course, there's also the production costs. You'd have to develop the technology to make really safe trains, make new railroads to hold these trains. It would cost a lot of money.
There's actually a good amount of positive factors that would greatly aid the economic and social situation in the United States. So, firstly, it is environmentally friendly. It significantly reduces the CO2 emissions that are very high from planes and cars. Additionally, safety is also a huge factor. Car drivers are more than 10 times likely to die in an accident. Now, additionally, there is a great increase of convenience and efficiency. It reduces times of travels, which actually will eventually increase the output of the economy. Because people are going to waste less time in traffic, people are going to waste less time, in different planes. It's going to be everything's going to be faster, everything's going to be faster. So the economy is going to be working at a higher pace. Additionally, it will create a large number of jobs because lots of workers are needed to create rail, lots of workers are needed to operate them, managers. It'll be a very good boost to the economy. Additionally, it links the economy by connecting large cities. Cities that were, hours away from each other are going to be within reach within minutes, which again is going to increase the productivity of the economy. More importantly, it's going to reduce the 7 billion oil trade deficit and it will lower the dependency on foreign oil. And finally, the congestion relief will be significant since there are going to be less cars on the road. So now let's look at some graphs that we have on the slide. On the top left corner, we have the graph. The red line represents the expense, and the blue line represents the profit. So as you can see, the after a certain point, the profit is significantly higher than the expense, which again shows that it is very good for the economy. And the graph on the bottom just shows that um trains do not produce lots of CO2 emissions, for example, like automobiles or aircrafts do.
Okay, so let's move on to some of the potential negatives of high speed travel. So, first off, cost, of course, is a very significant factor. By spending so much on a public transportation budget, you're taking away from other budgets that may need it more, such as the military budget or, foundations like so. Um, Also, with the cost and the economy overall, increased government spending has a tendency to raise inflation, as shown by long run aggregate supply graphs. And so, if we're in a period where inflation is already high, government spending may even raise this further, which just hurts our economy even more. Nevertheless, safety can also be a very big issue when talking about high speed rail travel. Any of the crashes that will occur will be at a 200-mile-per-hour pace. And since these trains will probably be based in cities, these can be in urban areas with a lot of people involved. And of course, the people in the train. So you're producing a very big safety hazard for a lot of the people involved. Um, This also would likely create a dependency on these trains. A lot of people, I know, when doing this project in the first place, a lot of people complained about Amtrak in the ways that there would be constant delays and people would be late for work because trains took so long. If a lot of people are using high-speed rails, this would just happen on a larger scale. There will also be environmental damage in regards to the construction of high-speed rails. So since, for example, you take the Midwest line that they're trying to make right now, it's 3,000 miles long. You would have to clear 3,000 miles of forest or brush, etc., all this territory that would need to be altered. And then, of course, in the long run, it would probably save energy to create this public transportation and CO2 emissions. But to make these things in the first place, you're going to be using a lot of metal, you're going to be using a lot of wood for the train tracks, etc. So this would be using a lot of resources.
Now, in conclusion, despite the I guess pretty significant negatives, me and Ava, we still believe that benefits actually in the long run will outweigh the negatives. Economically speaking, the high-speed bullet trains will improve the economy and connect the United States into a more united country. Although, in order to really achieve the true um, efficient and productive high speed train system, it requires a lot of strong political will and leadership by political candidates. In order to achieve efficiency that we're talking about, certain people need to step.
My name is Chris Bell. I am a legislative assistant with the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure in the U.S. House of Representatives. Well, I mean, one, you can start with the financing. I think that in terms of the general way that federal government finances a lot of large infrastructure projects, it is slow and it is reactionary, and especially with something that is a pretty revolutionary technology. I think absolutely. I mean, there is already an existing network, at least within the within the framework of Amtrak, for example. I mean, it is a pretty fast network that is relatively expansive across a large country. Still provides, really solid connectivity across, say, 40% of our rural communities, and that's just on top of these other large sprawling cities that it does cover. There's already been a will to do so. In terms of converting that to a high-speed option,
right.
I think it's a matter of finding the political will and finding the money, which both of those are kind of intertwined. That's part of that we have. Like, we can't even dream of what the negative aspects would be. Honestly, I really can't. I mean, it is so much more efficient to move, especially between areas that are a little bit closer together. And it's greener, reduces emissions.
Right.
So many more people can be transported, and especially in a lot of our cities are going. It's the Northeast Corridor, or the Midwest as well. Take the Midwest for example too. There was not a whole lot of air coverage in those areas, and so it was like, oh, it's kind of the only answer. And there are some of the national Amtrak lines run through there, and then they can hop onto a state-supported line as well. But that's because that's pretty much the only option. And so providing a more high-speed, more reliable high-speed rail option would totally change the game in terms of consumer confidence, in terms of how they think about what areas are accessible to them, in terms of the impact on the environment, especially. So honestly, I can't really think of a negative benefit.
I got you.
Or a negative effect. Sorry.
Right.
Short answer is no. And I really hope that we do see the day where the conversation around infrastructure, especially around rail, focuses in on innovative ways to invest in a lot of these technological advances that we do see, everywhere else around the world.
Of course. Yeah.
Right now, it's definitely not the linchpin issue, though, within the infrastructure argument.